A morning sun cast long shadows across the steps of the county courthouse, where a small crowd had gathered, murmuring quietly to one another. Cameras from local news outlets angled for the perfect shot, trying to catch the unfolding drama of a custody case that had gripped the community for weeks. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with a tense, almost tangible energy. Lawyers shuffled papers, their polished shoes squeaking against the waxed floor, while the judge adjusted his robe, ready to preside over a case that had already sparked heated debate outside these walls. At the center of this storm of legal procedure was Lily, a tiny 3-year-old girl, sitting stiffly in her chair with wide, fearful eyes. She clutched a worn, faded stuffed bunny, a small comfort from home amidst the intimidating sea of adults. Her short legs dangled above the floor, barely able to reach the ground, and every now and then she pressed the toy closer to her chest, as if it were a shield against the uncertainty surrounding her. Lily's parents sat on opposite sides of the courtroom, their eyes locked in silent hostility, each glancing occasionally at their daughter with a mix of love, fear, and frustration. On the far side of the courtroom, Officer Daniels stood with K9 Rex, a tall, broad-shouldered German shepherd with an intelligent gaze. The dog's sleek coat shimmered under the fluorescent lights, his ears alert and body perfectly still. Rex was there for security, a standard precaution for cases that sometimes spiraled into unpredictable confrontations. Yet, even in his trained composure, there was a calmness that seemed to radiate from him, an almost human understanding that went beyond obedience. The air in the courtroom was thick with anticipation as lawyers began their opening statements. Arguments about custody rights, parental responsibilities, and past incidents filled the room with tension, but none of it registered with Lily. To her, the voices of adults blended into an incomprehensible hum. Her eyes, however, kept drifting toward Rex. There was something different about him, something that drew her attention more than the stern judge or the bickering parents. Perhaps it was the way he didn't bark, the way he simply watched, patient and steady, or the way his deep, intelligent eyes seemed to recognize her fear. Whispers fluttered across the courtroom like delicate threads of curiosity. "Is the child allowed to approach the dog?" murmured one of the reporters, adjusting her microphone. The judge noticed the shift in energy and raised his eyebrow, signaling for silence. But even his commanding presence could not suppress the undercurrent of fascination that had begun to ripple through the room. Every person present, lawyers, officers, reporters, and onlookers, sensed that something unusual was about to happen. Lily shifted in her chair, her tiny hands trembling slightly as she hugged her bunny closer. She looked around the room, scanning the sea of adult faces. Most wore stern, unreadable expressions. Some were filled with curiosity, others with barely concealed frustration or boredom. But then her gaze returned to Rex, and something in her relaxed. The dog sat perfectly still, his posture calm yet alert, as if he knew he had an important role to play. Lily's heart, beating fast with both fear and curiosity, seemed to sync with his steady breathing. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, Lily began to inch forward. The courtroom's murmurings grew louder, a mixture of concern and intrigue. Lawyers exchanged glances, unsure whether to intervene. "She's just a child," whispered one, "but she's moving toward the K9. Is that even allowed?" The judge, noting her movement, leaned forward, trying to assess whether this required immediate interruption, or if it would pass harmlessly. The audience held its collective breath. Lily, unaware of the formality and weight of the courtroom, crawled carefully across the polished floor. Her small hands brushed against the edge of chairs and the folds of skirts, each movement deliberate and cautious. Meanwhile, Rex remained composed, his tail swishing gently but not disrupting his calm posture. It was a dance of trust, unspoken yet powerful, drawing the attention of everyone present. As she neared him, Lily's breathing steadied, her fear momentarily replaced by curiosity and instinctive trust. Rex lowered his massive head slightly, letting her feel safe as she approached. A ripple of awe passed through the courtroom. Even the parents, who had been locked in silent, icy tension, couldn't help but watch with softened expressions. The child and the dog, two beings so small and so large in contrast, created a striking image, a moment that transcended the legal proceedings around them. The judge, normally a figure of unflappable authority, adjusted his spectacles and leaned slightly forward. "Interesting," he muttered under his breath, more to himself than anyone else. The lawyers, caught between procedure and amazement, exchanged uncertain glances. This wasn't something any courtroom manual had prepared them for. A 3-year-old was moving toward a police dog with trust and instinct, and the room held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Lily finally reached Rex's side and hesitated for a moment, her tiny hands hovering above his broad back. She could feel the warmth of his fur, the gentle rhythm of his breathing. With a quiet giggle that drew the attention of the entire room, she reached out and placed a small hand on his neck. Rex's ears twitched slightly, acknowledging the touch, but he did not move. It was a stillness that carried authority and reassurance, as though he were silently saying, "I am here. You are safe." The courtroom murmurs turned into hushed silence. Everyone sensed that this was no ordinary moment. The tension of the custody battle, the anger and fear of adults, and the rigid formalities of legal proceedings had momentarily evaporated. In their place was something extraordinary, a connection born of instinct, trust, and the unspoken bond between a child and a dog. Cameras clicked, recording not just a legal spectacle, but an emotional tableau, a scene of innocence and courage that seemed to transcend the courtroom itself. Even Lily's parents, despite the months of tension and bitterness, couldn't look away. Her mother's eyes glistened with tears she didn't immediately recognize as sadness or pride, while her father's jaw loosened, a mix of awe and uncertainty passing over his features. No one had anticipated that the small presence of a police dog could evoke such a powerful reaction from a frightened toddler, and in turn, from everyone else present. The moment stretched on, each second feeling longer than the last. Lily's tiny fingers stroked Rex's fur gently, a subtle reassurance that seemed to steady her own racing heart. The judge cleared his throat, reminding everyone that the proceedings needed to continue, but even his authoritative tone lacked the usual sharp edge. Something had shifted. The courtroom had become more than a place of rules and evidence. It had become a space where innocence, trust, and instinct could make even the most hardened adults pause in wonder. Finally, Lily rested her cheek against Rex's warm fur, her small body relaxing as the dog's steady breathing enveloped her. The audience's tension broke slightly, replaced with quiet awe. Everyone could sense that this seemingly small child turning to a police dog, would have repercussions far beyond the immediate moment. Something profound had begun to unfold, and no one could predict exactly how it would shape the outcome of the day. Outside, the morning sun continued to climb, but inside the courtroom, time seemed suspended. A 3-year-old and a German shepherd had become the unexpected center of attention. And in those shared, silent moments, everyone present sensed that this was more than just a custody case. It was the beginning of a story that would captivate, astonish, and ultimately change the lives of everyone in that room. The courtroom had fallen into a charged silence as Lily remained beside Rex, the German shepherd's massive presence somehow comforting rather than intimidating. Each small movement of the child drew the attention of every adult present. Some leaned forward in their seats, uncertain whether to intervene, while others simply held their breath, caught in the fragile tension of the moment. The murmurs of reporters and spectators outside had transformed into an almost reverent quiet within the room. Something extraordinary was unfolding, and everyone knew it. Lily's tiny fingers grazed Rex's fur, and for the first time, she seemed to relax. Her grip on the stuffed bunny loosened, though she still clutched it to her chest, a reminder of home and safety. Her eyes scanned the room briefly, darting to her parents. Her mother's expression was soft, almost incredulous, while her father's brows were furrowed, a mixture of astonishment and apprehension. But Lily's focus remained on Rex, a steady presence that had somehow calmed the storm raging within her. Rex's head tilted slightly, his intelligent eyes following her every movement. The dog's body language was calm but attentive, exuding quiet confidence. He had been trained for detection, protection, and service. But what happened next was something no training could have predicted. He seemed to understand the child's fear, her instinctive search for safety. The courtroom, once tense with legal disputes and simmering parental conflict, now watched as a silent conversation passed between a toddler and a police dog. Whispers spread through the room. A few spectators murmured, "She's really going to touch him," or "This is unbelievable," their voices a mixture of concern and awe. Even the judge, known for his stoic demeanor, leaned slightly forward, adjusting his spectacles as he observed Lily's cautious approach. His gavel sat untouched, the weight of authority momentarily softened by the extraordinary scene. Lawyers glanced nervously at each other, uncertain whether to proceed with arguments or wait for the inevitable climax of this unexpected moment. Lily's progress was slow and deliberate. Each inch forward carried a mixture of innocence and courage, as if guided by an invisible hand. She crawled carefully over the polished floor, avoiding chairs and briefcases in a tentative dance that mirrored her cautious curiosity. The adults in the room felt an unusual tension, not fear, but the awe of witnessing something unprecedented. The air seemed to thicken with anticipation, every heartbeat echoing the silent question. What would happen when she reached Rex? As she neared the dog, Lily paused, her tiny hand hovering just above Rex's broad back. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, her breath small and measured. The stuffed bunny, once a source of comfort, had shifted slightly to one side, almost forgotten as her focus remained entirely on the dog. Rex remained still, his ears slightly raised, sensing the child's trepidation. There was a mutual recognition in that moment, a silent understanding that transcended language, age, and species. The courtroom reacted collectively, an almost imperceptible wave of awe passing through everyone present. Reporters stopped typing, their cameras still as they captured the delicate moment. Lawyers froze mid-gesture, pens paused above paper. Spectators leaned forward, captivated by the extraordinary simplicity and profundity of the scene. Even Lily's parents were momentarily silent, their previous tensions momentarily replaced by a mixture of fear, hope, and disbelief. For the first time that morning, the child was not merely a subject of debate, she was an active presence, shaping the energy of the courtroom. Slowly, Lily extended her hand, her fingertips brushing against Rex's thick, warm fur. The dog's tail swished gently, a subtle acknowledgement of her touch. A collective gasp echoed around the room, not of alarm, but of recognition. Something extraordinary was happening. The child, terrified and vulnerable just moments ago, had found a source of comfort and trust in the massive canine. It was a connection forged in instinct, one that human words could not adequately describe. Rex lowered his head slightly, inviting Lily to rest against him. She hesitated for only a brief second before leaning forward, pressing her small cheek to the dog's warm, steady neck. The courtroom held its breath. Witnesses, lawyers, and the judge alike were captivated by the unexpected display of trust and courage. It was more than a child finding solace in a dog. It was a moment of unspoken communication, an emotional bridge spanning fear, uncertainty, and authority. For a fleeting moment, the tension of the courtroom melted away. The shouting, arguing, and legal maneuvering faded into the background, replaced by the quiet hum of a shared experience that transcended procedure. Lily's mother wiped a tear from her eye, while her father's jaw loosened, astonished at the vulnerability and bravery of his daughter. The dog, silent and composed, became a symbol of stability and empathy. Together, they created an image that none in the room would ever forget. Innocence meeting loyalty, courage meeting calm, all in the midst of human conflict. The judge cleared his throat lightly, though his gaze remained fixed on the child and the dog. "Let's proceed carefully," he said, his voice softer than usual. Lawyers nodded, still unsure how to continue their arguments in the face of such a heart-stopping moment. The courtroom's energy had shifted from confrontation to anticipation. Everyone instinctively sensed that what happened next might alter not only the tone of the trial, but possibly its outcome. Lily, emboldened by Rex's calm presence, reached further along his back, her fingers exploring the contours of the dog's muscular form. She giggled softly, a sound that seemed to ripple through the room, breaking layers of tension that no adult argument had managed to do. The sound was infectious. Even hardened officers and lawyers found themselves smiling, captivated by the tiny girl who had, in seconds, become the focal point of the courtroom. Rex remained still, patient and unwavering. He had been trained to follow commands, to protect, and to detect danger, but he had never been asked to provide emotional guidance. And yet, here he was, acting instinctively, responding to Lily's needs without hesitation. The child's innocent bravery had transformed him from a mere security presence into an active participant in the unfolding story, a living bridge between fear and safety. The audience leaned forward collectively, anticipating what Lily might do next. Would she retreat, overcome by the formality of the courtroom? Or would she continue her silent exploration, deepening the bond with Rex? Every eye was fixed on her tiny movements, her careful gestures, her unwavering focus. Time seemed suspended, stretched by the tension, curiosity, and awe that permeated the room. Finally, Lily rested her entire cheek against Rex's neck, letting her small hands sink into his fur. A ripple of relief and quiet excitement passed through the courtroom. Everyone recognized the gravity of the moment. This child, alone in her own fear, had found trust in the presence of a dog. And this trust, pure and instinctive, had the power to shift the course of events that none in the room had yet realized. It was a moment suspended between fear and hope, between tension and revelation. And as the room held its breath, all knew that this was just the beginning, the first act of a story that would astonish, move, and ultimately change every life in that courtroom forever. The courtroom seemed to exhale collectively as Lily pressed her tiny cheek against Rex's warm, sturdy neck. For the first time that morning, there was a palpable shift in the atmosphere. The tension, which had thickened like fog over every adult, began to soften. Lawyers' pens hovered motionless over legal pads. Spectators leaned forward, captivated by a scene that transcended ordinary courtroom drama. Even the judge, who had seen decades of conflict and human stubbornness, blinked in disbelief at the fragile yet extraordinary connection unfolding before him. Rex, the trained police dog, sat perfectly still. His ears twitched occasionally, eyes scanning the room with an alert intelligence, but he never wavered in his patience. He had been taught to respond to commands, to protect, to sense danger, but never to comfort a terrified toddler. Yet instinct guided him. Something deep within him recognized Lily's fear, her need for assurance, and he provided calm strength without instruction. In that moment, the courtroom's rigid hierarchy, the judge, lawyers, parents, was rendered irrelevant. A child and a dog had created a bridge no one could ignore. Lily's tiny hand stroked Rex's fur, slow and deliberate. She seemed to find in him a confidant, a protector, a friend. Her initial hesitancy had melted into quiet curiosity and trust. Each soft giggle or sigh she made rippled through the room like a gentle wave, touching hardened hearts and calming tense nerves. Officers, usually stoic and unyielding, glanced at each other with quiet astonishment. "I've never seen anything like this," muttered one under his breath, eyes never leaving the child. Her parents, though still seated at opposite tables, were equally spellbound. Lily's mother's hands trembled slightly as she reached to dab at her eyes. For a moment, she forgot the legal wrangling, the past grievances, and the arguments she had rehearsed in her mind for months. Here was her daughter, small, vulnerable, and yet somehow brave, finding solace in a dog, a being she couldn't possibly have known would understand her. Her father, his expression a mix of awe and lingering tension, unconsciously straightened in his seat. He, too, recognized the extraordinary nature of the moment. Lawyers murmured among themselves, unsure how to proceed. A few considered interrupting, worried about procedure and decorum, but the judge raised a hand subtly, signaling patience. Even he, authoritative and accustomed to control, sensed that this moment demanded observation rather than interference. Something profound was unfolding, and it was beyond legal boundaries. Beyond protocol, it was pure, instinctive, and utterly human. Rex tilted his head slightly, allowing Lily to nuzzle closer. The dog's warmth and quiet presence seemed to ground her, giving her courage she hadn't realized she possessed. Her giggles grew slightly louder, a sound so innocent and full of life that it softened the tension in the room like sunlight piercing through clouds. Spectators leaned closer, their curiosity blending with awe. Cameras clicked, capturing the unprecedented bond, preserving it in a moment that would soon ripple far beyond the courthouse walls. For a few seconds, Lily's parents forgot their arguments entirely. They watched, powerless, as their daughter's tiny frame leaned against the massive dog. It was a scene that encapsulated something far larger than the custody battle. Trust, innocence, and the unexpected ways beings can provide comfort to one another. Lily's bravery was not loud or assertive. It was quiet, instinctive, and profoundly moving. And Rex, in his silent, attentive way, had become the unexpected anchor of the entire room. Whispers broke out among the spectators and courtroom staff. "Look at her," someone murmured, voice trembling slightly. "She trusts him completely." Another added, "The dog. He's not just calm. He understands." The murmurs spread quickly, like wildfire, through the room. Every person present, lawyers, officers, the judge, even the parents, felt the weight of the moment. Lily and Rex were no longer just participants in a legal proceeding. They were the center of a living, breathing lesson in courage, trust, and empathy. Lily's small hands began to explore Rex's fur more confidently. Her initial hesitancy gave way to curiosity. She traced patterns along his back, feeling the ripple of muscles beneath his thick coat. It was as if each stroke of her hand reinforced a silent communication between them. Rex responded with the subtle movements of a creature fully aware of his role, protective, patient, and calm. He allowed her the space to explore, never intimidating, never forcing, merely guiding by his presence. The judge, normally impassive, adjusted his glasses and leaned back slightly in his chair. He had presided over countless cases, seen angry parents, defiant witnesses, and contentious lawyers. Yet nothing had prepared him for the quiet drama playing out in front of him. For the first time that morning, the courtroom's hierarchical structure seemed irrelevant. A toddler and a police dog had created a scene that transcended authority, procedure, and expectation. It was raw, emotional, and impossible to ignore. Even the lawyers, who prided themselves on strategy and control, found themselves captivated. One whispered to another, "This is incredible. She's not just a child. She's brave." The other nodded silently, eyes fixed on Lily's delicate movements. Arguments paused, legal scripts abandoned, as the focus shifted entirely to the profound interaction between a small human and a trained animal. The room was collectively witnessing the power of instinct and trust, unmediated by adult complexities. Suddenly, Lily's gaze shifted slightly, her tiny finger pointing toward the defense table. The room stirred, tension rising again, but this time mixed with curiosity and suspense. Rex's head turned in the same direction, as if acknowledging her observation. The courtroom froze, sensing that something unexpected was about to happen. Eyes widened, murmurs spread, and even the judge's hand tightened slightly on the edge of his bench. The silent bond had suddenly gained purpose beyond comfort. It was a moment pregnant with possibility. Lily's parents exchanged worried, astonished glances, realizing that their child, so small, so vulnerable, might have noticed something that everyone else had overlooked. The defense attorney paused mid-note, sensing an inexplicable shift. Officers adjusted subtly, sensing a potential revelation. Spectators leaned forward, captivated. Cameras remained focused, recording each heartbeat of the unfolding drama. The courtroom had become more than a venue for argument. It was a stage for a story of courage, innocence, and unexpected guidance. Rex, steady as ever, adjusted slightly, guiding Lily with subtle movements. The child, emboldened by the dog's silent support, began to inch closer to a small folder partially concealed on the table. Her tiny fingers hovered above it for a moment, hesitant, before brushing it lightly. The courtroom collectively gasped. A folder that had gone unnoticed for weeks, full of documents, notes, and evidence critical to the custody case, was suddenly in the spotlight. What a child and a dog had uncovered, through instinct and trust alone, was now impossible to ignore. The murmurs grew louder, filled with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. Lawyers whispered urgently, trying to assess the situation, while the judge's eyes widened behind his glasses. Lily's parents were stunned, unsure how to react. Their tiny daughter had, in mere moments, revealed a hidden truth that could dramatically influence the outcome of the case. The child, innocent and unassuming, had found clarity where adults had failed. And Rex, the loyal guardian, had facilitated it silently, without any training or command. The courtroom held its breath. Every eye followed the child and the dog, waiting for the next move, sensing that something extraordinary was unfolding. It was not just a moment of trust or comfort. It was the beginning of revelation. What Lily would do next, guided by the silent wisdom of Rex, could change everything. And in that suspended moment, everyone knew they were witnessing the rare and remarkable intersection of innocence, courage, and instinct, a bond that had transformed the energy of the room entirely. The courtroom had grown silent, every ear straining, every eye fixed on the unlikely pair, Lily and Rex. The tiny toddler, emboldened by the dog's unwavering presence, had paused just a few feet from the defense table. Her small hand hovered above a partially concealed folder, fingers trembling slightly, as if sensing the weight of the discovery she was about to make. Rex remained calm, his eyes following her every movement, his tail still, his posture a model of patience and alertness. Everyone in the room felt it, the sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. Whispers floated around the courtroom, a mixture of fear, curiosity, and awe. Reporters behind cameras leaned forward, capturing every nuance. Lawyers froze, unsure whether to intervene, debate, or simply wait for the inevitable moment. The judge's eyes narrowed slightly, a subtle frown forming, but he remained silent, sensing that interrupting could ruin a moment of unprecedented significance. Even Lily's parents, tense and wary, found themselves holding their breath, a mix of concern and astonishment passing over their faces. Lily's tiny fingers brushed the folder. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to pause. Then, with the instinctive precision of a child, guided by trust and courage, she lifted it slightly and pointed toward her mother. The courtroom erupted not in noise, but in collective realization. Every adult present could see that this folder contained evidence that had gone unnoticed, evidence that could dramatically shift the course of the case. Murmurs of disbelief spread like wildfire. Rex, as if sensing the urgency, nudged Lily gently with his nose, guiding her movements. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet it seemed to communicate to her, "This is important. Keep going." The courtroom held its collective breath. Lily, unaware of the full implications, continued to point and gesture toward the folder, her small actions carrying the weight of revelation. The defense attorney froze mid-gesture, realizing that this innocent child had just exposed something they had overlooked for weeks. Gasps filled the room. The judge's expression shifted from curiosity to astonishment, his hand gripping the edge of the bench. "Counsel, what?" he began, but no words could adequately capture the shock and wonder in the room. Lily's parents were frozen in place. Her mother's eyes widened in disbelief, a gasp escaping her lips. Her father's jaw dropped slightly as he leaned forward, unable to look away. The child, mere inches from Rex's side, had become the center of a revelation that no adult had predicted. The folder itself seemed unremarkable, simple manila, tucked behind folders and papers that had gone unexamined. But the contents, once revealed, held the power to transform the custody case. Hidden documents, reports, and notes contained details of neglect, inconsistencies in testimony, and overlooked behavioral observations. It was proof that could not be ignored. The realization struck everyone in the courtroom simultaneously. A 3-year-old and the police dog had uncovered a truth that adults, trained in law and procedure, had failed to see. Whispers grew louder, a mixture of astonishment and admiration. She found it, one observer murmured, voice barely above a whisper. Another added, "The dog. He guided her somehow." Lawyers moved quickly now, realizing the importance of the folder. They carefully opened it, their eyes scanning the contents, matching the documents with prior testimonies and evidence. The courtroom's energy shifted once again, from tension to revelation, from uncertainty to awe. Lily remained calm, clutching Rex's fur as if drawing strength from the dog's unwavering presence. She had no understanding of the weight her actions carried, but her instinctive bravery had altered the entire courtroom dynamic. Spectators leaned forward in their seats, captivated by the combination of innocence, courage, and the silent guidance of a loyal dog. It was a scene that felt almost surreal, like a storybook moment brought vividly to life. The judge finally spoke, his voice steadier now, but tinged with disbelief. "Counsel, this changes the circumstances. We will review these documents immediately." Murmurs of agreement and speculation spread through the room. The revelation had not only exposed hidden truths, but had also shifted the balance of power in the case. For the first time, everyone present realized that the child's actions, guided by instinct and the dog's quiet presence, had a direct impact on the legal proceedings. Her parents, still stunned, approached cautiously. Lily's mother reached down, gently lifting her daughter into her lap, her hands trembling. "Sweetheart, how did you?" she whispered, unable to finish the sentence. Her father's eyes were filled with a mixture of awe and humility. For all their planning, arguments, and strategies, they had been blind to what their child instinctively understood. And Rex, ever calm, nudged Lily gently, as if acknowledging the bond they had shared to reach this moment. The courtroom staff and spectators watched in silence, some dabbing at tears, others whispering incredulous observations. The reporters frantically typed notes, their cameras focused on Lily and Rex, knowing that this extraordinary moment would capture the hearts of viewers far beyond the courthouse walls. It was more than a custody case now. It was a story of instinct, courage, and the extraordinary power of trust between a child and a dog. As the legal team sifted through the newly discovered folder, connecting the dots and verifying the details, the tension began to shift. What had once been a tense, confrontational courtroom became a space of revelation and clarity. The adults, despite their professionalism and experience, could not ignore the simple yet profound truth. Sometimes, insight comes from the most unexpected sources. In this case, it came from a 3-year-old and a police dog, partners in revelation without ever speaking a word. The judge, now fully attentive to the documents, nodded slowly. It appears this evidence was overlooked, or perhaps underestimated, he said, his tone a mixture of authority and astonishment. Lawyers adjusted their notes, cross-referencing statements and preparing to amend their arguments. Every person in the courtroom sensed that the course of the day had irrevocably changed. Lily's innocent, instinctive actions had created a turning point that no adult could have engineered. Outside, the sun continued to climb, but inside the courtroom, time seemed suspended. Every gesture of Lily, every subtle movement of Rex, had become monumental. The child, unaware of her impact, had acted purely on trust and curiosity. The dog, trained but guided by instinct, had facilitated the revelation. Together, they had accomplished what weeks of preparation and adult strategy had not: the uncovering of hidden truths that demanded attention, respect, and action. The courtroom remained tense, but now with a different energy, a sense of awe and anticipation rather than conflict. Everyone, from lawyers to spectators, officers to parents, understood that the unfolding story had shifted. What had begun as a routine custody hearing had transformed into a narrative of courage, trust, and unexpected revelation. Lily and Rex had not only captivated hearts, but had also altered the trajectory of justice in a way no one had anticipated. And so, in that silent, electric moment, the room collectively held its breath, waiting to see how the adults would respond to the extraordinary revelation brought to light by innocence, trust, and a remarkable bond. Every eye was fixed on Lily and Rex, the unlikely heroes whose quiet bravery had upended the courtroom and whose actions would echo far beyond those polished floors. The courtroom was tense, the energy shifting from shock to cautious anticipation. Lily, still pressed close to Rex, had revealed the folder that held the key to the case. Her parents leaned forward, their faces etched with disbelief and hope, while the lawyers and judge began to scrutinize the contents carefully. Every document, every note, and every scribbled observation seemed to carry a weight far beyond what anyone had imagined. Weeks of overlooked evidence suddenly illuminated the truth-hidden behaviors. Inconsistencies and neglect had been exposed in the most unexpected way. The folder's contents were meticulous, compiled by social workers and prior observations that had been misfiled or disregarded. There were notes on missed appointments, discrepancies in statements, and subtle indications of unsafe environments for Lily. For adults trained in law and procedure, the folder was critical. For Lily, it had been an object of curiosity, discovered through instinct and trust. The courtroom's murmurings rose to quiet exclamations as the legal team began reading aloud, each revelation amplifying the drama of the moment. Rex sat patiently beside Lily, his head slightly tilted, watching as the adults processed the significance of her discovery. The dog's calm presence seemed to stabilize the courtroom, preventing the chaos that might have erupted from such a revelation. Every eye was fixed on the child and her unlikely companion, realizing that this small act of instinct had shifted the balance of the case. The innocence of a 3-year-old and the loyalty of a police dog had created a turning point that no argument, no strategy, and no experienced lawyer could have produced. Lily's mother leaned forward, hands trembling, as the first few critical details were read aloud. Her voice caught in her throat as she whispered, I didn't realize. How much? Her husband's jaw clenched, his eyes betraying a mixture of guilt, awe, and helplessness. For months, they had been embroiled in conflict, focusing on arguments and legal maneuvering, yet it was their child's instinctive trust in a dog that had uncovered the truth. The irony was not lost on anyone in the room. The judge, now fully absorbed in the documents, adjusted his glasses and nodded slowly. This changes the context significantly, he remarked, his voice carrying the weight of authority and astonishment. Legal teams began cross-referencing statements, evaluating the veracity of observations, and piecing together the implications of the overlooked details. The courtroom, once dominated by conflict and tension, had transformed into a theater of revelation, the unfolding truth captivating everyone present. Witnesses gasped as specific incidents were brought to light, events previously dismissed or forgotten. Missed appointments, subtle neglect, and inconsistencies in testimony now painted a picture that demanded serious consideration. It was clear that the child's safety and well-being had not always been prioritized. Each detail read aloud created a ripple of emotion, a wave of realization that justice could no longer ignore. The room vibrated with tension, awe, and a strange sense of relief that the truth finally had been revealed. Rex, ever vigilant, sensed the shifts in emotion. His presence had become symbolic, quiet, protective, and unwavering. He had guided Lily without instruction, providing a calm anchor that allowed her to act instinctively. Now, as adults grappled with the weight of what had been discovered, Rex remained the silent hero, embodying loyalty, guidance, and the extraordinary bond between a child and a dog. His calm, steady presence reminded everyone that courage and revelation could emerge in unexpected ways. The legal teams worked quickly, realizing that the newly discovered documents could alter custody arrangements dramatically. For weeks, arguments had focused on abstract principles, rights, and assumptions. Yet it was the tangible, overlooked evidence that carried the ultimate weight. The discovery prompted urgent discussion among lawyers, officers, and court staff. They reviewed previous testimony, compared notes, and recalibrated their strategies, all under the watchful gaze of Lily and Rex, who seemed to understand the magnitude of their own actions. Spectators leaned forward in rapt attention. Reporters furiously typed notes, capturing every nuance of the unfolding drama. The child, unaware of the full implications of her discovery, smiled softly as she clung to Rex's fur. Her innocence contrasted sharply with the intensity of the courtroom, a reminder that truth and courage often arrive in the most unexpected forms. The audience was captivated not only by the revelation itself, but by the extraordinary manner in which it had come to light through instinct, trust, and a profound, wordless bond. Lily's parents were forced to confront difficult emotions. Pride mingled with guilt, awe with shock. They had been so focused on proving their own points that they had overlooked the signals their child might give them. And yet, here she was, guiding the adults toward clarity and justice, without fully understanding the consequences. It was a humbling reminder that children, in their purity and instinct, often perceive truths that adults fail to recognize. The courtroom atmosphere shifted again, this time toward action. The judge called for a brief recess to allow lawyers to assess the documents fully. Legal teams discussed the implications in hushed tones, carefully planning their next steps. Meanwhile, Lily remained close to Rex, her small hand occasionally patting his side, as if acknowledging his role in this extraordinary revelation. Every person in the room recognized the unspoken truth. The dog had been more than a security presence. He had been an enabler of justice. Conversations between lawyers and court staff were laced with astonishment. "I've never seen anything like it," whispered one attorney. "A child and a dog uncovering evidence like this. It defies reason." The sentiment was echoed throughout the courtroom. What had been a routine custody case had transformed into a story of bravery, loyalty, and instinctive intelligence. Lily and Rex had demonstrated that courage need not be loud, and revelation need not be orchestrated. It could simply emerge, quietly, in the right moment. Outside the courtroom, the sun was high in the sky, casting golden light across the courthouse steps. Inside, the unfolding drama continued, but with a different energy. What had once been a space of conflict had become one of revelation, awe, and reflection. Witnesses, parents, lawyers, and officers alike recognized the extraordinary moment they had witnessed, a turning point in the case, brought to light not by strategy or authority, but by a small child and a loyal dog. As the recess began, Lily remained seated beside Rex, her tiny body calm and composed. The folder rested nearby, evidence of the extraordinary impact she had unintentionally made. The courtroom buzzed quietly with discussion, speculation, and admiration. Every adult present understood that the unfolding events were unprecedented. The truth had been uncovered in the most unexpected way, and no one could ignore the remarkable partnership between child and dog that had made it possible. Even the judge, known for his strict adherence to protocol, took a moment to study the pair. There was an unspoken acknowledgement that the courtroom had witnessed something extraordinary. Courage, instinct, and loyalty converging in a way that had altered the course of justice. As spectators filed out briefly during the recess, the story of Lily and Rex had already begun to ripple beyond the walls. A tale destined to inspire, astonish, and remind everyone of the extraordinary ways truth can be revealed. By the time proceedings resumed, the courtroom had shifted. The energy was quieter, more focused, imbued with a sense of respect and awe. Legal teams approached the case with renewed attention. Parents contemplated the lessons learned, and witnesses processed the magnitude of what had occurred. Lily and Rex, oblivious to the legal implications, had completed their silent mission, uncovering truths that adults had missed, revealing the importance of instinct, trust, and courage, and forever changing the dynamics of the case. When the courtroom reconvened after recess, the atmosphere had shifted entirely. The tension that had once dominated the room was now tempered by awe, respect, and an undercurrent of disbelief. The hidden folder that Lily had discovered lay open on the table, its contents now clearly visible to everyone present. Lawyers whispered hurriedly, cross-referencing documents, piecing together overlooked evidence, and adjusting their strategies on the fly. Yet all attention kept returning to the child and the dog, the unlikely duo whose instinct and trust had sparked this extraordinary revelation. Lily sat quietly beside Rex, her small hands folded on her lap, occasionally stroking his fur. Though unaware of the full weight of her actions, she sensed the charged energy around her. Every adult in the room seemed captivated by the sight. A 3-year-old whose innocence had guided the exposure of critical truths, and a police dog whose calm, patient presence had allowed her to act with confidence. The courtroom, previously rigid and hostile, now felt almost tender in its recognition of this extraordinary bond. The judge adjusted his spectacles, carefully scanning the documents once more. "This evidence, it cannot be ignored," he stated, his voice steady but imbued with gravity. Murmurs rippled through the spectators, many of whom had been quietly observing the proceedings with growing astonishment. Lawyers on both sides worked to realign their arguments around the newly discovered information. In a legal environment that often prized technicality over human reality, The presence of undeniable facts revealed by a child and a dog demanded attention and respect. Observers in the courtroom began to recognize the profound implications. This was no longer merely a dispute over custody or legal rights. It was a story of courage, loyalty, and revelation. Lily's parents sat side by side, their expressions a complex blend of pride, awe, and remorse. For months, their focus had been on asserting control and protecting their own interests. Now, through the instincts and trust of their child, they were confronted with a truth that they could neither deny nor manipulate. Rex remained composed, his tail occasionally swishing, his gaze never leaving Lily. To the untrained eye, he was simply a dog, sitting patiently beside the child. Yet for those who understood, he was much more. A silent guide, a source of calm, and an unspoken protector. His presence had transformed the courtroom from a space of tension into a stage of revelation. The adults, all trained in procedure and law, had been unable to uncover what the child and dog had revealed through trust and instinct. Lawyers began reading sections of the folder aloud, emphasizing overlooked details, missed appointments, subtle indications of neglect, and discrepancies in statements made during prior hearings. Witnesses who had testified before now shifted uncomfortably, realizing that some of their observations had been disregarded or misunderstood. Each new piece of evidence amplified the significance of Lily's actions, demonstrating the critical role her discovery would play in reshaping the outcome of the case. Spectators, once casual onlookers, were now deeply invested. The unfolding story was no longer simply legal. It was emotional, inspiring, and almost cinematic. Whispers of admiration passed through the room. "She's incredible. I can't believe it. The dog. He's amazing." Cameras clicked repeatedly, capturing moments of subtle interaction between Lily and Rex, the soft nuzzle of her hand, the gentle shift of his head, the quiet comfort they provided each other amidst the chaos. Even the courtroom officers, accustomed to maintaining order rather than observing emotion, found themselves affected. One officer, usually stoic, quietly murmured, "I've never seen anything like this. The way she trusts him." Another nodded silently, understanding that this was more than a simple interaction. It was a powerful demonstration of empathy, instinct, and courage, a reminder that sometimes human logic alone cannot navigate the complexity of truth. The judge called for a brief pause to allow the lawyers to consult privately on the implications of the documents. During this time, the courtroom remained almost eerily silent. Lily rested her head briefly against Rex's shoulder, drawing warmth and reassurance from his calm presence. Her mother leaned in, softly whispering words of comfort and awe. Her father watched quietly, his stern exterior softened by a mixture of pride and humility. Even the journalist seemed reluctant to break the spell, carefully recording the unfolding events without interrupting the delicate balance of attention. When proceedings resumed, the focus was on the newfound clarity the folder provided. A judge methodically addressed each aspect, ensuring that all relevant details were considered. Lawyers presented arguments informed by the newly uncovered evidence, emphasizing the safety, well-being, and best interests of the child. Each point made the courtroom acutely aware of the remarkable journey that had brought them here, from months of contention and overlooked details to the instinctive, courageous actions of a 3-year-old guided by a loyal police dog. The room was filled with emotional intensity. Some parents in the audience wiped tears quietly from their eyes. Observers whispered stories of their own children, recalling moments of unexplainable instinct or trust that had guided them in unexpected ways. The shared experience connected everyone in the courtroom, reminding them that beyond the legal procedures lay a human story, a story of bravery, guidance, and the extraordinary bond between child and animal. Rex's presence continued to command quiet respect. No one attempted to distract him or move him, recognizing that his role was central to the unfolding events. The dog had guided Lily with subtle nudges, calm patience, and steady attention, enabling her to uncover truths that adults had missed. In that courtroom, the ordinary had been transformed into something extraordinary through the quiet heroism of an animal and the unassuming bravery of a child. Lily's mother finally spoke, her voice soft and filled with emotion. "I can't believe how brave you are, Lily. And Rex, you've helped her so much." Her father's voice, rarely gentle, added, "We didn't see it before, but we see it now." Their acknowledgement was not only of the discovery itself, but of the extraordinary courage and instinct that had made it possible. The courtroom collectively recognized the depth of this moment, the humanity in a story that had started as conflict. The judge, moving with measured authority, summarized the unfolding impact of the revelations. "We are witnessing not just legal clarity, but a demonstration of courage and trust that transcends ordinary proceedings," he said. His words resonated deeply, as everyone present reflected on the power of innocence, guidance, and instinct. Lily had become more than a participant in a custody battle. She was a catalyst for truth, her actions rippling across the courtroom and into the hearts of all who witnessed them. As the day progressed, the energy in the courtroom evolved. Lawyers presented arguments informed by evidence that had previously been ignored. Witnesses provided more precise testimony. Officers maintained order, but the tension was now replaced by quiet focus. And throughout it all, Lily and Rex remained central, not just physically, but emotionally. They had created a ripple effect that extended beyond legal proceedings, touching hearts, challenging assumptions, and inspiring awe in all who observed them. By the end of the afternoon, it was clear that the unfolding story would not soon be forgotten. The hidden truths uncovered by Lily and Rex had reshaped the narrative of the case, demanded reconsideration of custody arrangements, and reminded everyone of the extraordinary ways that innocence and loyalty can impact the world. The courtroom, once a place of rigid procedure, had become a space of revelation, emotional resonance, and profound human connection. And as the final words of the day were read, Lily rested her head once more against Rex's broad shoulder. She had acted instinctively, guided by trust and instinct, and in doing so, had changed the course of events for the better. The courtroom remained quiet, filled with the unspoken understanding that a 3-year-old child and a loyal police dog had accomplished something no adult argument or strategy could have achieved. It was a moment that would linger, inspiring and astounding anyone who would hear of it. In the most unexpected way. And no one could ignore the remarkable partnership between child and dog that had made it possible. Even the judge, known for his strict adherence to protocol, took a moment to study the pair. There was an unspoken acknowledgement that the courtroom had witnessed something extraordinary: courage, instinct, and loyalty converging in a way that had altered the course of justice. As spectators filed out briefly during the recess, the story of Lily and Rex had already begun to ripple beyond the walls. A tale destined to inspire, astonish, and remind everyone of the extraordinary ways truth can be revealed. By the time proceedings resumed, the courtroom had shifted. The energy was quieter, more focused, imbued with a sense of respect and awe. Legal teams approached the case with renewed attention. Parents contemplated the lessons learned, and witnesses processed the magnitude of what had occurred. Lily and Rex, oblivious to the legal implications, had completed their silent mission, uncovering truths that adults had missed, revealing the importance of instinct, trust, and courage, and forever changing the dynamics of the case. The courtroom was tense, but a new kind of energy had settled over it, a mixture of respect, anticipation, and awe. Lily remained seated beside Rex, her small fingers brushing his fur, her wide eyes taking in the solemnity of the proceedings. The folder she had discovered lay open on the table, every document a testament to her unexpected courage. Adults in the room, from lawyers to the judge, were acutely aware that the momentum of the case had shifted irrevocably. The child's instinctive actions, guided by Rex's calm presence, had transformed what had been a standard custody battle into a story of revelation and emotional resonance. The judge, a man accustomed to decades of legal arguments and rigid procedure, cleared his throat. His gaze swept the courtroom, lingering on Lily and Rex, and shifting to her parents and the assembled legal teams. "Today," he began, "we have witnessed something remarkable. Beyond the procedural matters before this court, we have seen courage, trust, and insight displayed in ways no adult could have anticipated. This court acknowledges the extraordinary actions of the child and the police dog present here today." His voice carried weight, echoing through the chamber with an authority softened by awe. Lily's mother felt tears prick at her eyes. She glanced at her daughter, still small and vulnerable, but now radiating an almost palpable confidence. Her father's jaw softened as he nodded in quiet acknowledgement, understanding the depth of what had just occurred. For months, they had been consumed by conflict and legal maneuvering. Yet it was their child's instinctive courage and her bond with Rex that had ultimately illuminated the truth. In that moment, all past arguments seemed trivial compared to the life-changing revelation brought about by their daughter and the loyal police dog. Lawyers approached the bench one by one, presenting evidence in the newly discovered folder and emphasizing the critical details it contained. Missed appointments, inconsistencies in testimony, and observations of neglect were read aloud. Each revelation was met with careful consideration by the judge, who meticulously documented every point. The courtroom, once a battlefield of accusations, had transformed into a chamber of discovery and reflection. Adults listened not just to the words, but to the story of courage and trust that had brought these truths to light. Rex remained vigilant, his eyes flicking between Lily and the unfolding proceedings. The dog's calm presence acted as an anchor for the room, a silent reminder of the extraordinary bond that had enabled the child to act with such precision and instinct. Every movement he made, from a subtle nudge to the steady support of his massive frame, reinforced the message that trust and courage could transcend age, size, and expectation. Adults who had entered the room, brimming with confidence, now watched in humble recognition, realizing that they had been guided by a force beyond their understanding. The judge turned to Lily's parents. "Your child has demonstrated remarkable courage and insight," he said, his voice steady. "It is clear that her safety, well-being, and best interests must remain the central consideration in this case." He paused, allowing the words to resonate. The evidence revealed today, facilitated in no small part by the actions of the police dog, has fundamentally shifted our understanding of the circumstances. The gravity of the moment hung in the air. Everyone aware that this ruling would shape not only the custody arrangement, but the lives of all involved. Lily's mother reached down to gently hold her daughter's hand. "You've been so brave, sweetie," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I can't believe how strong you are." Her father added, his tone quieter than usual, "We are proud of you. More than you can imagine." Lily looked up at them, her eyes wide and innocent, and patted Rex on the head. She had acted instinctively, without understanding the complexity of the situation. Yet her actions had brought clarity and resolution. The adults in the room were left humbled, grateful, and in awe of her courage. The judge continued, reading the formal ruling aloud. Custody arrangements were revised to reflect the child's best interests, informed by the newly uncovered evidence. Provisions were made to ensure her safety, emotional support, and continued well-being. The courtroom listened intently, aware that the decision had been shaped not only by facts and procedure, but by the extraordinary events that had unfolded through the child's bravery and the dog's guidance. It was a ruling grounded in justice, but elevated by humanity. Spectators, journalists, and courtroom staff exchanged looks of astonishment and quiet admiration. Cameras captured the unfolding resolution, preserving the moment for a wider audience, who would be inspired by the courage of a 3-year-old and the loyalty of a police dog. Conversations quietly erupted among attendees, each reflecting on the extraordinary chain of events, the child's instinct, the dog's calm guidance, and the ultimate revelation of truth that no adult argument had been able to achieve. Rex remained beside Lily, his body a protective presence. She rested her head against his shoulder briefly, her fingers entwined in his fur. The judge offered a small, almost imperceptible nod of respect to the dog, acknowledging the unique role he had played in guiding the child and facilitating the revelation of critical truths. In that courtroom, it became clear that heroism could take many forms, not always loud, not always visible, but profound in its impact. As the proceedings concluded, Lily's parents approached the bench, thanking the judge and legal teams for their careful consideration. Their expressions were a mixture of relief, pride, and renewed perspective. The child who had once been frightened and overwhelmed had emerged as a quiet force of truth and courage. The loyal police dog, patient and intuitive, had been her guide, protector, and companion through an experience no toddler should have to navigate alone. Together, they had achieved what adults could not. The courtroom slowly emptied, but the energy lingered, an unspoken acknowledgement of the extraordinary events that had transpired. Reporters continued to capture the pair on camera, eager to share their story with the world. Spectators discussed the remarkable bond between Lily and Rex, reflecting on the lesson that courage and trust often arrive in unexpected forms. The day had begun with tension, fear, and uncertainty, but it ended with justice, revelation, and an enduring sense of awe. Outside, the sunlight bathed the courthouse steps, a symbolic reflection of the clarity and hope that had emerged within. Parents, lawyers, officers, and onlookers carried with them a story that would not soon be forgotten. A tale of a child's bravery, a dog's loyalty, and the power of trust to illuminate hidden truths. For Lily and Rex, the journey had been instinctive, yet the impact was monumental, redefining lives, inspiring hearts, and reminding everyone present that sometimes the smallest and quietest among us can change the world. As Lily and her parents left the courtroom, Rex by their side, the bond between them was unmistakable. She held his leash lightly, her small fingers curling around it with trust and affection. The crowd paused to watch, some offering applause, others simply observing in quiet respect. It was a moment of victory, not only for justice, but for the remarkable display of courage and loyalty that had made it possible. In that moment, it was clear that the story of Lily and Rex would echo far beyond the courtroom. It was a tale of discovery, trust, and extraordinary partnership, a reminder that heroism comes in many forms, and sometimes it arrives in the most unexpected places. The innocent instincts of a child and the unwavering guidance of a loyal dog. The courthouse door swung open, sunlight flooding the steps as Lily, her parents, and Rex emerged into the crisp afternoon air. The world outside seemed to echo the courtroom's transformed energy, brighter and lighter, carrying with it the reverberations of a story that had already begun to spread beyond those polished floors. Journalists and photographers gathered at a respectful distance, capturing every moment of the small child clutching her police dog's leash, her eyes wide with innocence, yet brimming with quiet confidence. The scene was one that would capture hearts across the nation. As cameras clicked and microphones were discreetly held aloft, Lily remained calm, her tiny hand patting Rex's broad head. She had acted instinctively in court, unaware of the monumental consequences of her actions. But now, in the aftermath, the world seemed to notice her courage. People whispered and pointed, some shaking their heads in disbelief at the unfolding story. A 3-year-old and a police dog changed a custody case? One observer murmured, "It's incredible." Others nodded silently, understanding that they were witnessing something rare, a moment of innocence and bravery that had reshaped lives. News crews began to report the story immediately, and by the end of the day, social media feeds across the country were flooded with images of Lily and Rex. Captions celebrated their bravery, loyalty, and the unassuming power of trust between child and animal. Viewers shared the story widely, struck by the unusual heroism that had emerged in a quiet, non-violent, and profoundly human way. For many, the story was not just about a custody case. It was a lesson in courage, empathy, and the extraordinary ways truth can surface. Lily's parents, still holding her hands, were both humbled and proud. Months of argument and tension had given way to relief and astonishment. Their daughter, once small and fearful, had revealed a hidden strength they had not anticipated. They glanced at each other, a quiet understanding passing between them. They had witnessed something extraordinary, and the bond between their child and Rex had made it possible. They had entered the courthouse seeking legal resolution, but left with a profound lesson about courage, loyalty, and trust. Rex remained composed, his presence grounding everyone around him. Children, onlookers, and even adults who had gathered near the courthouse steps were drawn to him. Some reached out cautiously, admiring his calm demeanor and alert eyes, sensing the quiet power that had guided the events in court. Rex, trained for protection and law enforcement, had exceeded expectations. He had not only supported a child emotionally, but had also played a crucial role in uncovering evidence that no adult had noticed, becoming an unsung hero in a story that would inspire countless people. In the days that followed, the story of Lily and Rex spread like wildfire. Newspapers, websites, and television segments highlighted the extraordinary events, framing them not as mere legal news, but as a tale of courage, trust, and unexpected heroism. Experts weighed in on the bond between children and animals, emphasizing how instinct, empathy, and companionship could create profound outcomes. Families shared the story widely, inspired by the quiet power of a child guided by a loyal companion. The narrative became a touchstone for discussions about trust, safety, and the unique insights of children. Lily's life shifted subtly after the trial. While her routine remained mostly the same: playtime, meals, naps, her parents noticed a change in her demeanor. She carried herself with a quiet confidence, a sense of purpose born not from understanding the complexities of law, but from instinct and trust. Rex remained by her side, a loyal constant, accompanying her on walks, to the park, and even during school introductions. Their bond had deepened, solidified by shared experiences, trust, and the extraordinary circumstances that had brought them into the national spotlight. The courthouse itself became a symbol of the unlikely duo's bravery. Court officials recounted the story to colleagues and visitors, marveling at the rare events that had unfolded within its walls. Legal scholars discussed the case in seminars, emphasizing the unusual yet profound impact of non-traditional influences on judicial outcomes. It was a story that blurred the lines between law and humanity, highlighting how instinct, empathy, and courage could alter proceedings in ways that textbooks rarely addressed. Despite the attention and media coverage, Lily remained blissfully unaware of her fame. She played, laughed, and explored the world alongside Rex, guided by the same trust and instinct that had changed the courtroom. Her parents marveled at her resilience, her intuition, and the quiet bravery she had demonstrated. They recognized that the world would continue to celebrate their daughter's courage. But they also understood that the most profound lesson was personal. Trust, empathy, and loyalty could inspire extraordinary outcomes, regardless of age. Schools and local organizations reached out to recognize Lily and Rex's heroism. The child received letters and drawings from classmates and neighbors, celebrating her bravery and her bond with her dog. Rex, meanwhile, was honored quietly, his role acknowledged in ceremonies and official recognitions for service animals. The pair became local heroes, inspiring programs and awareness campaigns about child safety, empathy, and the extraordinary ways animals could positively impact human lives. Over time, the story became part of a larger narrative about courage and loyalty. Families, educators, and law enforcement professionals cited the events as an example of unexpected heroism, emphasizing how intuition and trust could reveal truths that experience or training might miss. Lily's story inspired countless people to value observation, instinct, and the unassuming power of children and animals alike. It was a reminder that sometimes the most powerful forces in life come from the smallest and most unassuming sources. Years later, the bond between Lily and Rex remained unbroken. She had grown, but the lessons of trust and courage endured. The courtroom incident became a cherished story in her family, a reminder that bravery and empathy could change the course of events. Rex, now older but still vigilant and loyal, continued to provide comfort, guidance, and companionship. Together, they embodied a unique partnership, a testament to the enduring impact of courage, trust, and the extraordinary power of a bond formed in unexpected circumstances. As Lily reflected on the events in later years, she remembered the day not with fear, but with wonder. The courtroom, the folder, the lawyers, the judge, they all faded into memory. But Rex remained by her side, a constant reminder of bravery, guidance, and the unexpected ways trust can transform lives. Her story, widely shared and celebrated, continued to inspire. It was a story of courage without pretense, loyalty without expectation, and the extraordinary outcomes that can emerge when innocence and instinct meet steadfast companionship. And so, the tale of Lily and Rex endured not just as a courtroom anecdote, but as a universal story of hope, bravery, and the enduring lessons that even the smallest among us can teach the world. Children, animals, and the bonds they share possess an unassuming power capable of transforming lives, revealing truths, and inspiring humanity in ways that adults often overlook. Their story would continue to echo, a lasting testament to the courage of a 3-year-old and the loyalty of a remarkable police dog.